Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of this live stream series of porting a UXP-based plugin, to be precise, the Lorem Ipsum plugin for Adobe XD, which, by the way, is also open source, over to an add-on for Adobe Express. Last week, we already looked through the documentation, figured out some stuff we might need to look out for in our implementation, and hopefully this week we'll already get a little bit more into actually developing the add-on and implementing some first functions, hopefully getting around an issue that we discovered last week surrounding the fact that it is currently an experimental API to figure out what kind of text element is currently selected. But we already discovered a potential workaround, so hopefully that won't be a blocker for today. And yeah, so also just as a quick note, because somebody also wrote a comment about these episodes being a bit too long for them, that's not an issue. I can totally understand that you might not have the time to spend 2 weeks watching me develop an add-on for 4 weeks. That's totally understandable. At the same time, that's kind of the point of this format, that it really should be raw and live and encompass the whole development experience, including maybe getting stuck on a problem and so on. So yeah, this is really just part of the concept. However, what I can tell you is that at the end of this series, we'll also do a sort of recap session. It will probably be a live session. Maybe there will also be a blog post. We'll have to see about that. Where I'll cover the lessons learned from this experience. So yeah, with that might be more up your alley, so to speak. And then for everyone else, welcome. And I think that should be pretty much everything that I want to talk about now. Oh, I totally forgot. Sorry about that. I maybe should have introduced myself. My name's Zuri Klaschka, pronouns they, them, or she, her. I am a plugin developer for Adobe XD mostly, but also Adobe InDesign, for example. I am now building my first add-on for Adobe Express. So this is all about this journey. I have also worked for 2 years at Adobe from 2021 to 2023. So also saw some bits and pieces from the other side. And now I'm freelancing again. So this is just a project where we can have a look at how my process looks like for these things. Maybe you can pick up 1 or 2 tips and tricks that I might have from my experience. Maybe we can discuss these things also at some point. Maybe you can see that or this session just as a sort of co-working session and work on your own add-ons. In the end, the goal is to have an add-on that is also open source and that is published to the add-on marketplace for Adobe Express. Without any further ado, let me start sharing my screen here. And yeah, so last time we didn't really get too much into developing our plugin. All we really did was to create our basic structure for our add-on based on the bold for Adobe Express boilerplate developed by Justin Taylor. And we also looked a little bit through the documentation, which led to a few notes that I took for myself, including the most important functions we might need. We had a look at how we might get around not being able to determine what type of text element we have. And by type of text element, I mean whether it's the default type, the one of the text layouts, or text flow. And within this default type, this, by the way, contains, so to speak, both point text and area text, or auto hide text basically. So yeah, I think that will probably be the first thing we'll have a look at today. So our main problem, or maybe problem is a little bit much of a word, but our main challenge with this is that within this text node element, the layout property is experimental. And so with that, we can't really use this, because we also want to publish this add-on to the marketplace, to work out which kind of system we want to use to apply our placeholder text. So in the original plugin, I'll quickly open that in Adobe XD, what things looked like. And this time again, I forgot to show these lower thirds in the stream, so I guess that will be a running gag through this series. But yeah, how it worked in the original plugin was that if you had point text, so a text without a defined area, it would always just insert 2 words, as it also says right here. So as you can see, it just inserts Lorem Ipsum because it has no basis of how much text you want. But if I have a text area with a defined size instead and run Lorem Ipsum for that, I mean, in this case, nothing changes because it already had the Lorem Ipsum text, but it applies as much text as fits into this text area. And with that, really what we need to figure out now is how we can determine what kind of layout we have without using the layout API. And while that might sound a little bit far-fetched and a little bit like I'm actively trying to avoid using the right API for this, that's just one of the limitations we have here. And while it is a little bit inspired by the limitations of the series, where we want to get to an add-on we can publish at the end, really with developing integrations, this, in my opinion, is quite normal that you experience these kinds of issues and have to find more or less clever ways to work around them. And so what we figured out last time already was that we might have the possibility of, let me quickly go back into my notes here and look at the, sorry, I'll just not click. I've learned that much now. And essentially, we might be able to determine the type of layout used for our text node based on appending some more text to our text element and looking into whether the height or width of this changes. Because with point text, if I now go back to Adobe Express, this right here is point text. Sorry, no, this seems to be area text, but let's do this again. Add your text. With point text, really the width adjusts as we have more content, and only when it wraps, the height also adjusts with it. And so as long as we only append a little bit, we might be able to hope, and there will be edge cases to this, but you know, we have to get there one step at a time. We might be able to say, hey, this is point text because all that changed was the width. At the same time, if I now take a text area that has some defined dimensions, like this one right here. Oh, sorry, that's a text flow right here. But yeah, if I now specify the width, then this is no longer considered a point text, I think. And so now it doesn't change the width of the element anymore, because the width is now locked. And so with that, it is only the height that changes when we add more text. And so that might then be the basis for determining what kind of text element we have. At the same time, as we just already noticed, it's not, and let me unlock this and just clean this canvas up a little bit. It's not without edge cases, and so what we have to do at the beginning of this episode is really to figure out if we can cover enough of these edge cases one way or another to still rely on that kind of system, or if maybe for Adobe Express this is currently not feasible, at least as long as this API is still experimental, and we have to just let the user specify how much placeholder text they want to insert. So, with that, let's jump into our code. And what I want to do here is really just to try to implement a function that can give us this sort of information. So, let's go to our main.tsx, which we can also load right now. So just npm run dev with the bold thing. Then Adobe add-ons, your add-ons, add-on testing. Yes, I understand that when loading this from an external server, that would be scary, but we're not loading it from an external server, or at least not from our perspective. And now we have our hello Lorem Ipsum here, which we inserted last time. And so hopefully with that, we can now actually dive into developing. And while later we will probably add something like React Spectrum to really use the sort of design language established for Adobe Express, here we'll now just use a standard button, which will do something on click, but it won't call sandbox, but instead it will call some, let's say, on click, let's call is, or text type. And that's a function we still have to define. That's not a problem. So let's just go in here and say function text type. Oh no, let's do it inside here because we can just use state, which we'll call to be determined. Const text type set text type is use state. And so with that, what we can do is we can define our function text type, which we need to call differently in this case. So get text type, and let's just use it like this, get text type on click. And what we will do here is we will do something with our sandbox API. So for now, let's just call the sandbox, console log the sandbox, sorry. And also in the end, we will set the text type to something different. Hello world for now, maybe. And let's also output this within our add-on. And so now we have this button, and if I click this, hopefully this will say hello world. And in our console is probably this proxy function, which will then be our sandbox API that we just logged. So yeah, because it's this kind of proxy function, you can see that it's not really that easy to look at within the developer tools. But yeah, the way this works, as far as I'm aware, and we can look at this. So in the utils, this is just the sandbox right here. And we could also use this get runtime thing, which might even be safer, presumably. Okay, we have the sandbox promise. So API proxy, export the type, resolve sandbox proxy. Okay, so we get this proxy, which will then presumably be this sandbox API right here. Yeah, exposing the API. And so this has some kind of create box function in here. And yeah, so with that, presumably we can also go in here and say sandbox dot create box, or was it create rectangle? No, create box with a width and a height. So let's say 100, 100. And if everything works as expected, yes, this creates a box. So yeah, we have this kind of sandbox API available. So in that case, we can quite quickly go over there. But for now, maybe let's just figure out if we want to use the get runtime function instead. I think this would probably be safer, right? Because it definitely awaits the promise. Well, with sandbox, it's kind of a... I would imagine it's kind of arbitrary whether that's already defined or not. So yeah, for now, maybe let's really do it like this, where we go async function, and instead of saying sandbox, we will get runtime, and that has to be in a constant. Const runtime equals await get runtime, and then hopefully that should work. Let's try that again, just to see if it works as expected. Yes, it still inserts a box. So with that, that still works as expected. And I think it's a little bit safer than just using this kind of arbitrary global variable. All right, so what we really want to do is not to create a box, but to do something different in here. So let me delete creating a box. And instead, let's say determine text node type. And for now, this will also return to be determined, but from the sandbox. And over here, let's go here and say dot determine, and unfortunately we don't have autocompletion here as it seems, determine text node type, I think it was, and set our text type based on that. Let's see if that works. That doesn't work. Okay, so it returns a promise. Fair enough. So let's just say await. So I assume just every document sandbox thing returns a promise. Yeah, to be determined, but from the sandbox. That looks better. Okay, so with that, let's just dive in here and essentially go through the same thing we already did last time. So first of all, let's just get a text node, and yeah, let's just copy this over code-wise and paste it here. And obviously we have to fix a few things in here, but that's not too much of an issue. So text node is within the selection, so this will just be some kind of node. Sounds good. And of course, right here it doesn't quite know yet that this is a text node, so let's specify this in here. And yeah, sure. So as text node, and apparently this type of text node doesn't have the full content attribute. So let's look into what's going on there. Text node is of type text node, which extends node. Okay, Express document SDK DETS. That is within the sandbox. Are the types just not up to date? Import add-on as a default. Let's see here. Code utils doesn't do anything for us. So with that, all our types come from here. So let's just look in here. Document sandbox. Here we go. That seems to be most of our types. So let's just look into text node. Yeah, apparently in this version, this really doesn't have all these things. So let's see if we can find some more up-to-date types maybe. So let me just go into the package.json and look into the versions. So let's just look at this npm package right here. And search for the Adobe add-on types and see what kind of version. 1.11. Yeah, okay, so there is a new version here. So let's just try updating everything. npm install. And once again, npm run dev. Go back to Express and refresh this. Connection was lost. Okay, so let's maybe deactivate this and activate it again. Yes, I understand. Perfect. There it is. And so now let's see if the text node has more stuff. Yeah, that looks much better. So all we needed was more up-to-date text node types. That's totally fine. And while, of course, this isn't really type-safe code at the moment because we just assume that something in our selection is a text node, for now it will be sufficient. And so instead of console logging this right here, this will be some kind of result. But we cannot return it immediately because we still need to reset stuff, so to speak. So let's just say that result equals tbd sandbox. And then in this case, the result would be auto hide text. And in this case, our result would be point text. And let's just see where this gets us. So let me quickly create a new text element, which should be point text. And in this case, something didn't work. So, right, we have to, of course, return our result. Otherwise, there's nothing that could work here. Yeah, that is determined to be point text. Is it still determined to be point text even if it's close to wrapping? Interestingly enough, yes, I'll take it. I don't quite understand why, because if I now were to add more text here, it would wrap. And in that case, it would become auto hide text. Because in this case, it's wrapped for the first time. And so with that, yeah, it just automatically becomes auto hide text once this gets specified for the first time. If I now were to double click it, it would be point text again. So would be interesting to figure out why it still sees this as point text in that case. So let me quickly deactivate or reset here and get it close to the edge and just see what happens. Interesting. So that's one of the weird edge cases again, apparently. If the API changes the text, it doesn't wrap automatically. But if we look at this again, if I now were to do this within the UI, it does wrap it. Probably not the smartest decision that I'll be taking here, but if that's really the case, what it means for us is that, yeah, that works as expected. So what I could now do would be to speculate that this will still be the case until the other API that we would really need becomes stable. Because then, as soon as I can change it, I would change it. But yeah, that would, of course, be a workaround for that. And I see someone's writing in the chat, try checking width instead of height. If I noticed correctly, in both cases, height changes, but in one of the cases, width does not. Fair enough. So we can, of course, also try that. So let's just say this with width, and of course this will then essentially flip these two. So let's, instead of doing an unequal check, do an equals here, so we can check that as well. And of course we have to reset it again. But yeah, let's go back to some content like this and get it close to the edge. So this would be point text, and if I now were to specify it, so that still works. So I'm not really sure what you were experiencing there, but yeah, I think it seems to work somewhat consistently, at least for these two options. So yeah, let me maybe change that back. And what I already thought about last time, I think, is that the one case where all of this really becomes weird is with text layouts. And so that is really what I want to figure out, if we can have some sort of stability around it. Because what we already saw here is that it doesn't make too much of a difference for our default layout. If we have a text flow, then it still says this is point text. And we have to reset this again, which isn't ideal, but you know, it's fair enough to say, hey, this isn't okay. This isn't supported right now by the add-on. So if I can get this to some sort of predictable stage, so to speak, then that would already be sufficient for me. Let me load the add-on again. Okay, so this is detected as point text. Why is it detected as point text? Because the height doesn't change. Fair enough. And presumably we don't have any stable APIs to check if the text is overflowing. So really with this kind of text area, we can't determine how much text fits into it. And so if that is the case, then the best we can do for this is also to treat it like point text. So let's look at the text layouts. For example, with the circle one, it says this is auto-hide text, which kind of makes sense, I believe, because, yeah, it changes both things. Changing both things is interesting. So maybe we could also determine if both things are changed. So let's try that. Yeah, let's make this a little bit easier by moving the cleanup up here and then just returning down here. That's a bit cleaner. And also allows us to more easily handle some more cases. So let me also determine the previous width and the new width. And then if both of them change, if previous height doesn't equal new height and previous width doesn't equal new width, then both have changed, which presumably in turn could mean that we have this sort of weird text layout, which we don't know what to do with at the moment. So let's try that. Add some text again. This should be point text. All right. Let's make this auto hide text and let's make it quote unquote weird with the circle thing. Weird text layout. Perfect. Arch is also a weird text layout. Bow, also weird text layout. And dynamic is determined to be point text, which wouldn't be catastrophic because point text would just mean inserting 2 words of Lorem Ipsum, which is easy enough to handle. So let's see what happens here. Okay, so sometimes it changes the width. Or maybe not. Here it changes, so sometimes it would change the width. Different question is there, because I'm okay with this detected as point text. As I said, point text is easy to handle. It doesn't have a lot of logic. It just uses 2 words. So with that, we could say this inserts 2 words. This inserts 2 words. And so with that, as long as it doesn't detect anything as auto-hide text that isn't auto-hide text, we are relatively safe here. Let's look at that again. Add your text. Let's just... Okay, this now says auto-hide text. That's unfortunate. And the reason, by the way, I say this is that with auto-hide text, what the system would, in its original implementation, be doing is to try to fit as much text in there as possible without growing beyond the original height. And so with that, these things, as you can see, there isn't really any deterministic more text equals more height from what I can tell. So I think there are scenarios here where it would not become larger or it would even grow smaller in height based on more text. And so that would then completely break the algorithm because the algorithm has the kind of natural assumption that the more text there is in the box, the larger the box is. So with that, this dynamic layout right here might be our downfall, so to speak, in making this workaround for now. But I'm not ready to fully give up on this quite yet. So yeah, I'll at least spend another 15 to 20 minutes trying to make it work. And if I can't, then that would be the point when I decide that no, we can't really get this to work either way. So let me try to understand what kind of layout engine, so to speak, is behind the dynamic text layout. Okay, this has some size, and okay, so it grows to a specific point. And then it grows smaller with more text, which is also what I just said would be our problem. But we can manipulate not really the height of it, but the width, which then in turn manipulates the height. What happens if I now put some spaces in here? Nothing. It's still, at least to some point, just shrinks the text up until a specific point when it creates a new line for the newly inserted text. And when that happens, okay, we have more control. This is slightly frustrating because I think that based on that, if I'm not mistaken, there's probably no way to determine this type based on the width and height. Except maybe, let me think. What I could try would be a sort of approach where I try a bunch of different additions to the text, and if both change at some point, then that would mean that it might be that sort of text. I mean, I'll quickly give it a try. I'm not really sure if it makes any sense what I'm saying right now and if this has any chance of working, but yeah, I want to at least try. So in that case, let's go through a loop, and yeah, sure, let's do it 100 times. It doesn't get any more ridiculous than that. Add this sort of stuff, and if at that point both don't match, then it's a dynamic weird text layout. Probably has no chance of actually working, but let's see. Okay, it says point text. And now it says weird text layout. Did it? I think it didn't quite remove everything afterwards. So yeah, we probably have to insert this here as well. And also here, I mean, this isn't supposed to be pretty code right now. It's just for testing. Now it says point text. Not really what it is, but I mean, as long as it wouldn't say area text, I would be happy. Auto hide text, sorry. Let me try to get it. Yeah, it still says auto hide text. Why does it say auto hide text? Because at no point with these sorts of additions did it change on both axes. Do I have any other way of detecting this? Let's see. If at any point the width changes, that could also be an indicator for maybe point text. Maybe point text. Yeah, it still doesn't want to. So the width, but why doesn't the width ever change with that? Because from what I can tell, it should change at least a few times, right? So let's try our non-cleanup version again. Or let's get this back into a state where it says auto-hide text, perfect. And so let's stop it from cleaning up. Okay, that's also not as much. Ah, right. I should say text node.full content.text. Otherwise, we'll just maybe point text 2 words. That would be better. Let's try that with 10 iterations instead. Make it a bit quicker. Maybe point text. Let's see if I can essentially get this into a state where it doesn't detect it as point text. I mean, of course, this requires more testing, but if this were to work, that would be perfect. I mean, this also detects as maybe point text because already in here, it detects that the width doesn't equal the other width. And so really the auto-hide text would only ever be in the end, right? So let's do the cleanup again. And really... And somehow I activated Zuri, and I don't want to talk to Zuri right now. Yeah, let's try it like that. Because I would be fine with 10 iterations of this probably in terms of, yeah, this says auto-hide text. Now it's maybe point text, which is fine because we assume it's point text when it's really point text. Now this says auto-hide text again. Ah, because I, within the loop, clean this up, which I don't want to do here, really. So... once again, under the system of it doesn't have to be clean code at the moment, let flag equal false. And if this happens, then flag equals true. The cleanup only happens outside here. And if our flag is set, then this would be point text. Let's try it like that. Maybe point text. Great. Weird text layout, also great. Works for me. Maybe point text. Works. Maybe point text. Maybe point text. Maybe point text. So this seems to work. I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm saying it might work. So let's see again with the default text layout. This should still be auto hide text. Perfect. If I do it like this, it's maybe point text. Perfect. And as a flow, it says auto hide text again, which isn't necessarily great. If flag or the height stays the same. Maybe point text, that would work. This is still maybe point text. This is auto height text. This is some weird text layout, fair. Maybe point text. Maybe point text. Weird text layout, fair. Weird text layout. Yeah, I think this could work. With a big asterisk and question mark of needs further testing, but this might work. Let's say it like that. So let me quickly think about how I want to clean this up at least a little bit. Do I still need this right here then? Previous, because this would still... This is a smaller condition, so to speak, than the above. So with maybe point text, we can just remove this. And so... we maybe should do this after the flag. Or no. Yeah, we need to say old height or previous height, I think it was. Yeah, it's not pretty right now, so, but yeah, let's just see if I messed anything up. That, yeah, it still seems to work. Okay, so let's go through this in a little bit more of a structured way for now. So we have the new height and the new width, at least from the first iteration. Text node, full content text equals previous text. So already here we have the cleanup, but then we have this whole mess right here, so we have to clean up again. So let's remove this cleanup. Yeah, also I noticed that today I'm not the most performant in terms of coding. It's just, you know, sometimes you have better days, sometimes things don't come quite as easily. I think last week was a little bit better in terms of that, but hey, that's also just something that happens and that we have to deal with. So I'm not really too concerned about that as long as I still somewhat understand what I'm doing here. That's all we need for the stream, really. So we have this text node, which isn't necessarily a text node, but let's ignore that for now. Previous width isn't used at all. So yeah, maybe let's just compare that to the previous width. Makes more sense. We don't really need the new width here. And probably, or hopefully, we'll have to see how the API structured, but hopefully we'll still be able to do it like that. Yes, looks good. So let's give this flag a better name. Changed width at some point. Then we reset things, and in the end we can return things. So I think we can also just wrap this into its own function. Extract to module scope. Let's just call this width changes with, or no, does width change with text. So we pass the text node, and I don't think we really need to pass the previous width. We can also just work off of the width that has at the beginning here. So let's just say that previous width equals our current width, so to speak. Remove this right here. And then in this case, we just return true. And in this case, we return false. And with that, we have an early return, so to speak. And yeah, I mean, we can actually have this max iterations as a parameter, just so that we could change it easily. So with that, let's quickly document this function. Text node to check. Iterations to check with needed for dynamic layouts that only change sometimes. Returns true if the width changes with text, false otherwise. Checks if with text. This is the case for point text, area text not, but dynamic text, dynamic layout, whatever it was called. Yeah, dynamic text, but only sometimes for specific combinations of text. Yeah, the width didn't change for, yeah, we can also make this a constant, of course. It didn't change for the text flow. So with that, it really only changed for the text layouts, circle, arch, bow. In these cases, we cannot rely on the height of the text node to monotonically increase with text. Okay, so with that we have this thing right here. And we should probably do a cleanup within this function as well. Oh, no, probably, maybe not. Okay, so we have this new height right here. Do we really need that? Yeah, let's just keep it in here. And hopefully with that, let's see. Let's just make this really long, just to Okay, maybe let's not make this really long. But let's make it a little bit longer at least. Auto hide text. Maybe point text. Maybe point text. Perfect. So let's also extract this into a sort of function. We don't need our result anymore. We don't need our previous width anymore. Okay, that doesn't make sense that it can't do that, but sure, not an issue. So let's just have a function is like point text for a specific text node. So, yeah, I mean, we have to do the selection validation later anyways, but yeah, for now, let's say if, or no, let's just return something like that. See if that still works. Point text. Not point text. Area text. I mean, it's not really area text, so auto hide text, but auto hide text, point text, auto hide text. Nice. Okay, so we just spent 55 minutes working around the fact that this API is still experimental, but hey, I think we got something that seems to work for most cases, and so yeah, that's all we can probably get for now. So let's just document this, and afterwards we can hopefully move on and progress a little bit further with our plugin. Sorry, not our plugin. I still have to remember it's add-ons now with our add-on. Text node is a text node to check like that, returns true, false otherwise, checks if a given text node is like a point text. This is the case if the height of the text node does not increase with text. That makes sense. In this case, the amount of placeholder text cannot be determined by the height. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, and of course we can also simplify this. We can just say return this whole thing right here. So let's maybe take the next step and actually validate that our selection is indeed a text node and not just assume it. So let me quickly just go. Yeah, next text node, yeah, is also experimental. I just thought maybe with that we could determine the other thing, but nope, not yet. Content. Let me quickly just see if I missed anything, but no, I don't think so. I think this is the best we can do for now. All right, let's determine the type next. So can just check for the type, and then we can compare this to stuff within this enumeration, which contains text. So let's have a function is text node node. Is this the node that we can import? No, not yet. Node. Oh yeah, we just have to complete this, and we can't do it like that. We learned in the documentation, but instead have to check for the node.type and return if this is equal to scene node type or something like that. Yeah, scene node type. So that should be importable from here. Or maybe not. Let's see here. Scene node type is an enumeration. Do not, I don't want to rely on it. Constants. Let's say anywhere here where I can import these. Classes, interfaces, class extension, inheritance. Collection classes, something like that. Yeah. Let's see. How can I access these sorts of enumerations? It's a new enumeration, see node type. Additional node types may be added in the future, that's great, but not really what I'm looking for at the moment. So let me just go back in here and just look for scene node type. Okay. Declare namespace API constants. Sure, but let's see here. Is there anything better I can import? Node, fillable node. Constants, maybe. Let's try that. Constants dot C node type. Ah, that looks better. Let's see if that works by saying, hey, const node equals selection. And actually we can specify the return type to make this type safe. Node is text node. Perfect. And so with that, if this isn't a text node, we return this thing right here. And so in that case, this should be a text node. Yeah, it's typed as a text node at that point because we already called it with the type safe check here. That, by the way, is a quick tip for TypeScript. If you have these kinds of custom type checks, so to speak, you can just type it as parameter name is type, and with that, you tell TypeScript that this function validates and verifies that this parameter is of the specified type, and so with that, TypeScript now knows if this isn't of this type, we return, so we don't progress any further. And so here we already know that this is a text node. And that, of course, is pretty convenient. And now we should check if our types are lying to us or not. So this should hopefully still work. Or maybe not. Panel has not initialized in a time limit. So in text node type, return. Okay. Let me just quickly try to reload things. Text node type. Auto hide text, that works. If I have nothing selected, okay, if I have nothing selected, then of course it still breaks. So let's go one step back, const selection. What's this? Yeah, let's do it like that for now. And so select exactly one text node. So with that also, if I now were to select 2 text nodes, it still says select exactly one text node. Auto hide text. Let's make this point text. Point text. Auto hide text. Select exactly one. Perfect. That's what we really want for now. And now let's make this a little bit nicer. Oh no, not for the determine node type, but we will do that later. That we just iterate through our selection and check for text nodes, essentially. Or maybe we can even do this now. So selection dot filter is text node. So selection is now an array of text nodes. And now we can say if selection no text node selected, perfect, and otherwise yeah, in that case let's still use our first element, even though later we might use additional elements as well. Okay, so we have a workaround. That was one of my biggest concerns for this episode, if we would find a workaround, because while I didn't think too much about how I could implement this, because really it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense with the whole concept of this format being figuring this out during the live stream. I still, of course, thought a little bit about, hey, what will we do today? And yeah, that was something I was worried about, how long this would take. And so I'm quite happy that we have this now, because it really allows us to dive into actually developing the add-on and not having to look for workarounds and the like anymore. Hopefully. I mean, of course, there can still be hiccups and we can find new problems we can dive into. But I think if that really works, and it looks like it does for now, then that's a huge leap for this project. So, is text node determines if the past node is a text node. Node returns true, false otherwise. Yeah. Okay, so let me quickly just commit these changes. Okay, why do we have a yarn log in addition to a package log? I mean, I don't care too much. Let's just keep it like that and clean up later. Okay, what did we change? Yeah, we added this sort of thing. And we did these things. Perfect. So let me quickly commit this. That is feature implement text node layout type checking workaround note that this might break in the future and should definitely be replaced by text node.layout once that's no longer experimental, but it seems to work for most cases for now. Alright, just committing these changes, and if you want to have a look at them yourself, all of this is on my GitHub profile, so github.com/pklashka, that's Papa Kilo Lima Alpha Sierra Charlie Hotel Kilo Alpha, and in there it is the Lorem-Ipsum-add-on, and as you can see, if I now go to source code, we now have this code here as well. And yeah, it's fully open source. So if you want to use the kinds of workarounds we can come up with here, please feel free to go ahead and use them. Just please include this license notice right here. All right, that's the code TS part of the workaround. So let's change gears a little bit. And what I now want to do is to actually look into how I can come up with the overall panel design. And yeah, to be honest, I'm still a huge fan of Adobe XD for designing this kind of thing. So let me quickly install the Spectrum plugin for it, which I'm currently wondering why I don't have it installed at the moment. And then we can just at least sketch a little bit on how this can look like as a panel before we actually go about implementing this. Just so that we have at least a little bit of an idea. And just for inspiration, let's once again have a look at how this looks like in Adobe XD. So I'll just take a screenshot here and paste it into our document just for reference. And also, if I do this with point text, we have this kind of call out that this is point text and will only insert 2 words of placeholder text. So that might also be something we want to use one way or another. Here we have the plugin. And now we want to switch this over to the Express theme and just see what we can come up with. I guess we need a little bit of type. We need a heading. The heading should then, yeah, the color theme light sounds good. Let's make this bigger. Ah, and it seems like I don't have Adobe Clean installed, which is a little bit bad. So let's quickly look into changing this. Adobe Clean fonts, Spectrum, download. Adobe Clean fonts, view downloads. Adobe Clean, that version, sure, app version 2020, absolutely. So let's quickly install those. I somehow install them together. Would be great. Light, yeah. Install. I recently upgraded to a new Mac, so that and now that looks much better. So we can also switch back to the default, which is still black, probably. Maybe just XL. And let's say this is Lorem Ipsum. Then I think we once again want to have a little bit of fills, selected text elements with placeholder text. I think that can still just stay as it is. And I'm not really too worried about spacing here. I just want to quickly figure out if I want to go for the same general sort of layout. So then we would have 2 selection boxes here. Let's see here. Combo box isn't really what I want. Picker, I think, sounds better. So it would then be this right here. Label would be placeholder text. Top label sounds good to me. Text would in this case be Lorem Ipsum, Latin standard. Is it required? I mean, yes, theoretically, but do I want to show this in the UI? I don't think so, because it's kind of natural that it's required. So with that, we have another one, and with punctuation mark. And with punctuation mark, this has period selected. And then we would have 2 checkboxes. And I'm currently trying to figure out if I want to use switches instead, just because I feel like they're a little bit more Express-like. And so let me just put them side by side and see which one I prefer. Checkbox or switch. I mean, also, of course, can have a look at how they are defined. Within the design language, switches allow users to turn an individual option on or off. They are usually used to activate or deactivate a specific setting. Checkboxes allow users to select multiple items from a list of individual items or to mark one individual item as selected. Yeah, so let me quickly have an internal philosophical debate about which one fits better here. Include line breaks. I feel like this is... Yeah, I feel like that might still be a checkbox, and so by extension the other one would be a checkbox as well. So yeah, I think let's just go with checkboxes. Let's have this one selected and say include line breaks. And the other one, which isn't selected, would be trim area height to fit inserted text. Now, I don't think we need that anymore, because if we have auto hide text, that adjusts automatically. And while within the Adobe XD APIs, we do have an API to check if the text overflows a text box, we don't have that API in Adobe Express yet. And so with that, we can't really determine outside of auto hide text whether or not the text fits within our text area. And so we can't really offer that option. This, by the way, also was something that I included in the original plugin, because Adobe XD at the time didn't have auto hide text areas. So with that, having a text area fit exactly the text that it has was quite a complicated endeavor in many ways. Okay, so with that, we can keep it at that. Have, I think, just one button down here, because it's no longer a modal, so we really only need one button. And I'm currently debating once again because if we only have one of these options, I would personally like a switch better, because like this it looks kind of lost, so to speak. But yeah, we still have to have time to change that. And so this would just be the insert text button, insert, and we can even say placeholder text in this case. Of course, we have a little bit more space. Something like that. And then let me see if we can also I mean, we could just have a sort of toast down here for the hey, point text, only 2 words thing. So this would then be not really informative, but not really negative either. So neutral, I guess. Can I leave one out? Yes. Can I actually leave both out? Yes, perfect. And then let me just do a little bit of OCR on this thing so that I can insert it here. I mean, we have to remove the line breaks. I mean, we can still think about whether we really want that or not, and we can still change things around. But yeah, I think with that we have a basic idea of what this could look like. So let me head back over to probably the documentation and see how we can do this. And since I've been a long-time fan of React Spectrum, it has its downsides, but still I prefer it over the still somewhat complicated workarounds for using web components with React. I mean, I know it's gotten better, but still doesn't really feel too intuitive to me, so I really like the React Spectrum things. So yeah, I'll probably try to use React Spectrum for now and see if that works decently enough. And if it does, we will just stick to it. So let me quickly go over to React Spectrum. Adobe. Getting started. And let's install it first of all. So let's open a new terminal tab, npm install this thing. And also, I just already saw this documentation, also at React Spectrum /theme-express and also the icons. So let's install all of them. And while that installs, I quickly have a little drink, just because my mouth is getting really dry at the moment. And it's still taking time, so at least that's not costing us any time. This time it isn't cat problems like last episode, but just my throat being a little bit dry. Okay, so did it install? Yes, that looks good. So with that, hopefully we can go back in and at least implement this sort of layout. And I don't know if we will get too much more than that today, actually, because time is quickly running out again. But yeah, I think even if we don't get to anything more than that today, we are on a pretty good track to hopefully, with time, next time, do a little bit more. So let's see, we have this sort of thing. I'm not really sure if we need all of that, but let's keep it for now. We'll probably remove a little bit of it later. Or yeah, let's just see how this would look like if we didn't use all of that. So let's not import this thing here. And is the app CSS imported somewhere? Let's see. In the index HTML? Nope. So really we go in here, import main TSX, which imports utils. Yeah, so I think that should be it. Yes, that looks pretty much bare bones. And with that, hopefully we can now do something like that. So just go in here. Of course, we have to import everything. The provider, import the Express theme, which we have to specify explicitly here. Let's also immediately import this thing, import the button, reformat stuff, and see if that actually works. Okay, that looks better than I expected. Let's see what things would look like if we re-imported the CSS. Yeah, I think we can leave that out for now. And then let's continue on. Okay, so also in the screenshots here, it has these weird sorts of borders on the background. So let me quickly try to figure out if that's something we can avoid one way or another. Oh, here. This right here probably has the background, or maybe not. Computed background color. Right, so this is the background color. Can I do something about that? Once again, trying to figure things out. Just part of the normal process. Let's take a look at the provider again in here. Theme, color scheme. Color scheme can only be light or dark. Perfectly fine. I think we might have to essentially fix this with some sort of hacky workaround, but it wouldn't be the first time today, so not to worried about that. So let's just carry on from here for now. Let's say we have a heading, and that just says Lorem Ipsum. Doesn't look like what I would have expected, but hey, let's just worry about that later. Then, it's been some time since I last used React Spectrum, so let me quickly have a look again at what the different things were called. We have just text, I think. Yeah, let's just use text. Copy over the text from our design. Import it. Cannot be used as a JSX component. That's weird. But I think it... Okay, no, it also doesn't work anymore, so apparently it can... Yeah, we have to import it explicitly. I remember it as much, so... Because otherwise it just uses a sort of standard class, which is called the same. So... Let's go back to the document, please. Perfect. Add-ons, your add-ons. Add-on testing. Yes. Connect. All right, that looks better. Also, now the text isn't italic anymore. I don't know why it was before, but hey, if it isn't anymore, I'm not complaining. Let's see, what do we need? Apart from that, we need these sorts of picker elements. Select picker, something like that. What was that called again? Forms. Not really the things I'm looking for. Color picker, list box, list view, menu, something like that. Picker. It's just called picker. That's easy. So picker placeholder text. Picker. Yeah. Picker. Label. Placeholder text. Holder text. No, not text type, but and what are the inner things? Item with keys. Item, key. Doesn't matter too much for now. Let's just quickly prototype this. Another picker, label, end with punctuation mark, end with punctuation mark. Let's do it like that again. Yeah, something like that. And then we have our checkbox. Does this work like that? Maybe. Yeah, I mean, of course, we still have to change some of these things, but we're getting there. Checkbox, and in the end, a button with some text. Yeah, I mean, we still have to change the layout, but you know, we're getting closer to having something that looks somewhat like what we're expecting. So I think there was, for example, a thing called flex in here. Action row with a gap. Yes, that sounds good. Let's just have it at least up to that point. And instead of a row, we actually want this to be a column. Width. Can we somehow give this full width? I think so. Maybe it was with the flex. Align items. Stretch. So it's just essentially your normal flexbox stuff abstracted away. I shouldn't reload this. I remember bad stuff happens when I reload this. So add-on testing, please. Yes. My first instinct is always to reload from other software. So yeah, let's just see what happens here. Oh. Okay, so basically here let's see what we need there. Would it be justify content? No, that also doesn't help. Because these things right here have the default width. Okay. Do I actually want this to be full width? Or do I just not care? Let's see. Can I somehow give this a better width? Yeah, I can specify max width for the form. Great. Menu width. Okay. I remember that there was a way to do this. Can I just say width 100%? It's been around 4 months since I last used. Yes, it works. Perfect. Okay, then disregard the last part. Let's make this a little bit more. Yeah, that's beginning to look a little bit better. So let's give this a width of 100% as well. Interestingly, that still has German internationalization here, because presumably React Spectrum uses the browser to figure out which language it should use, and so it says auswählen, which is select in German. Okay, so let's continue on here. Let's replace our placeholder text. That works, perfect. And then what I want to do really is have another flex right here. So that we can, in the end, put the button to the right. And I think in this case, we need justify content and yes. Insert placeholder text. Okay. We're slowly but surely getting there, I would say. So let's remove this for now. Also maybe remove the main element. We'll have to see about that. Yeah, now I'm really trying to figure out if there's some way in which we can either get rid of the background color, which should be easy, or even better, essentially get all these things to align with each other. So how much spacing does this have? I really want to know the padding, which is head pad, which is size 200, I guess. So let's maybe try this as well. Have a view here with a padding of size 200. Probably we need size 100 here because we already have some padding, but it might be that we can get rid of that padding altogether. So let me see here. How much space do we actually have? Okay, so the panel starts here. So we might be able, okay, this is the slot body. And here we have our panel with our shadow DOM. Yes, sure. Shadow root. And then we actually get to our iframe content. So this also still doesn't have... Okay, so our body has this kind of margin. So that shouldn't be too complicated to get rid of. We just go over to the index as CSS. And instead of the things defined here, really what I think I want to have. Yeah, let's just get rid of all of this. Do I still need the variables? Background. Let's keep the variables for now. Why not? Now let's say body margin 0. Actually, let's try the background. And I think we have some sort of background. Sorry, I need the variables again. We have this background, so maybe that's even the background used in the other thing. So let's just try that and see if that works. Yeah, that didn't exactly do what I wanted. And I shouldn't reload. Your add-ons. Add-on testing. I kind of wish right now that, I mean, not really, don't get me wrong, but I kind of, just slightly, wish that something with the live stream goes wrong this time and we have to use the backup recording, because in that case I can afterwards add a little counter of how many times I accidentally reloaded the page just to then realize that I shouldn't have done that. But yeah, okay, so that looks kind of better, but I don't think we want the body background. But that looks even worse, right? So, okay, so with that, really what we want to do is have the provider be at least 100%. Right. So let's just say if this had a min height of 100 SVH, that would work. It still looks bad, really. So actually what I think we want here is just to get this to have a transparent background. I think that would be much better. And to do that, maybe we can just use our view. So let's go back here, and we have this view already. So with that, we can just maybe say background color and maybe just give it gray 50. And that's apparently too light. Where does this background color come from? Ah, we still... Yeah, okay. I think that looks good. Let's refresh this. Yes, I think that is what we want, actually. I think we need to remove some of the padding, but apart from that, we should be good. So let's go back in here and say, in this case, this is just padding X. And for this thing right here, we need margin top. Well, let's actually do margin Y. Why not? Size 200 sounds good. And while it doesn't do anything right now, we at least have somewhat decent looking UI now. Still have to change a couple of things, but I think we're slowly but surely getting there. So let's just say this picker has a value. Initially, this... How do I set the initial selected key? 1 for now. Does that work? Not like that, so let's try it like that. Perfect, because now we can't unselect it, and that's what we want. Selected key 1, none. Perfect. Okay, we're getting closer. So let's maybe quickly have a look at how complicated these kinds of toasts right here are with React Spectrum now. I think they were added at some point, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong. Could be an overlay. Tooltip, no. Maybe it's not really a dialogue, so probably not. Contextual help. I think those are just the... Yeah, right? Alert dialog, also not what we want, so maybe that's just not implemented. Then that's the decision for us. That's also no problem. Let's see if toast is anywhere to be found. Ah, it's in beta. I mean, that's at least not something that... Hey, I want a toast. Yeah, show toast. Okay. So, let's just try it. We have to install it because it's still in beta, I think, but that's not an issue. And this sort of experimental we can use because it's not Express experimental, it's just UI experimental. So, npm install this thing right here. Because I just want to see if that works as I would like it to work. And if it does, that would be great. If it doesn't, I don't care too much. We can find a different way. Okay, that's installed. So we are supposed to put our toast container somewhere. So let me just let's put it at the bottom. That's nicer. Toast container. And with this button, what we want to do is toast container. No, not toast container, sorry, toast queue dot And that was a neutral one. Let's do the small text for now. That seems to work. Our styling is messed up again, but apart from that, better. That actually looks really good. Really promising in a sense. So let's do the longer text in here. I mean, that will be really annoying if we have more than one of these, but maybe we can clear it beforehand. Okay, it returns close. So, and we can pass it options. Have an action label on action, should close on action, should on close timeout. We can specify a timeout, which might help with this sort of thing. But then again, it's a really long message, so I don't really want to just automatically remove it. So let's just see. Toast queue dot. Do we have? Okay, so we would have to use the close function provided by this. But I mean, that wouldn't be too much of an issue, I think. Let's see, what does this return? Const result equals this thing. Result is a close function. So it's just a function. We can't really determine if it's already closed. What happens if I call this close function after we already closed it manually? Set timeout. Result after 5,000 seconds, and let's just close it manually before the 5,000 seconds are over. So let's refresh this, close it, and see if we get any errors. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Doesn't look like we get any errors. What that means is that we can just do the following thing. We have a global close function, which is just this thing, if nothing else. Then, in this case, our close function will be this right here. And we will call our close function beforehand. And hopefully, what this does, yeah, it closes it. It's not pretty, but it works, okay? So, you win some, you lose some. I think that's fine. And then, of course, we can also just have our selection errors handled that way as well. So, for example, if we now said hey, we didn't have this sort of thing. We didn't have a text node selected in this case. Let's just say toast queue dot negative. No text nodes were selected. Yeah, perfect. And that can also stay, or I mean, that I think can also have a timeout. So let's just add some options here. Timeout. Let's do 4 seconds for now and see how that works. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. I think that could work. Also, as a rule of thumb, I like to read through the text 2 times after noticing it. So no text nodes were selected. No text nodes were selected. And now it could close. Yeah, it's even a little bit on the long end to me. So maybe let's just do 3 seconds. No text nodes were selected. No text nodes were selected. Little bit short. No text nodes were selected. No text nodes were selected. I feel like that's it. And really, you can use your own metrics for that. That's just a rule of thumb I like to use, because if I can read it through it 2 times, others might be able to read through it 1 time, who are not so familiar with the add-on, and so that usually works. And then we can do the same thing again with toast q dot positive placeholder text inserted. And I think that will probably be a little bit shorter. Placeholder text inserted, because it just verifies what we already said. So with that, let's actually trim this down to, let's say, 2600 milliseconds. Placeholder text inserted, placeholder text inserted. Was it actually 2.5 seconds? Let's see. 21, 22, 23. That feels like more than 1, 2, 3. That's longer than 2600. Or am I missing something? Maybe I am, then we can still change it. A timeout to automatically close the toast after 10 milliseconds. Either my sense of time right now is completely amiss, or this doesn't quite work as expected. But hey, I think it's close enough for the moment. So, okay, we have 9 minutes left. I think there's one small thing I'd like to still do here. Or maybe not. Yeah, I think that'll be too complicated to make. So with that, I think that's where we'll end it today. Let me quickly commit this code again. So this is now first, so it's a feature, implement UI. First steps of implementing a decent looking UI for our add-on using React Spectrum. Note that this plans to use the currently in beta toast components of React Spectrum, which might change in the future. Docs for this can be found on this URL. And yeah, I just like to add a little bit of notes to commit messages, just so that I still know what I'm doing afterwards. Note that we used a somewhat hacky close function module level variable to ensure that only one large toast gets shot at a time. Not the prettiest, but there are no better APIs for this at the moment. Okay, so with that, that's over on GitHub again. Let me just verify that, because it would be really annoying if all of this got lost. So, source, main.tsx, yeah, that looks good. It's over on GitHub. So, with that, I think that concludes what we did today. Next week, we'll hopefully then be able to get into actually implementing, inserting the placeholder text and wiring that up with our UI. And so we're really making good progress here, I think. And what I mentioned in the beginning, I'll mention again here. At the end of this series, so probably after 4 episodes, so 2 more after this, we'll also do a sort of recap session at the very end, where we'll go into the lessons learned, what I took away as a primarily UXP-focused integration developer in developing my first add-on for Adobe Express. So yeah, maybe, and I would love to see you again. You can join, and now apparently it is the time where we switch into dark mode. But yeah, with that, I hope you can join again next week and the week after that. If not, as I said, first of all, these episodes are recorded. You can find them on the Adobe Developers YouTube channel afterwards if you want to rewatch some of it. Maybe in a year you remember that, hey, Zuri came up with a solution for that. Maybe I can look at how they did it at that time. Maybe you just want to join us again in a recap session. Either way, I wish you a great week. All the best in your development journey. And in the hope that I didn't forget anything, have a great day, evening, morning, whatever time it is for you right now. See you again.